Let's talk a little Miami Hurricanes recruiting because Miami has a top 10 class as we head into the fall. And week one is really going to set the tone, at least when it comes to recruiting, because Notre Dame comes to town, and so do the top recruits. We're going to get into it. Got Stephen Wagner here from Cane Sport. But, Stephen, there's been 10 commits to Miami since Jackson Cantwell committed to the Canes in May. Maybe I'm off here, but why wasn't it a more explosive summer for the Canes on the trail? I mean, Derk Cooper going to Texas. You had Calvin Russell to Syracuse. Like, why did Miami not clean up after Jackson Cantwell?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the word that you used there was explosive. In terms of the top end targets,
Right.
Obviously, Derek Cooper was and still is the top running back on Miami's board. Calvin Russell, Miami legacy, absolutely mega priority. Losing out on those two guys, I think, did kind of change the way a lot of us in the media kind of like viewed Miami's summer. But by all means, I don't feel like this is a bad recruiting class by Miami to this point, or that they had a bad summer.
Right.
They still landed. I think right now their blue chip commit ratio is somewhere around the 70% mark. They were able to land really, really big time priority guys like Vance Spafford, or wide receiver out of California that the Hurricanes absolutely love. Top 150 wide out in the country. They were still able to go out and get Shamorian Wingo, another 4-star top 150 receiver here in the state of Florida. That was really important to Miami to continue adding talent on the perimeter. They also got a Rivals 300 outlier in Tyron Evans. That was another guy who was really important to Miami as they're trying to get bigger, more physical body types. They're out on the perimeter. They also got 3-star defensive lineman Tyson Bacon, who right now he's only a 3-star in the Rivals industry ranking, and I believe his player grade is somewhere around an 87, but he was an absolutely massive priority for the Hurricanes that they did have very, very high on their board. Not to mention Anthony Kennedy, the 4-star run-stopping defensive tackle from Arkansas. He's another guy that Miami grew very, very high on this spring after Jason Taylor had the opportunity to get out to his school and see him. I really do think that this still is a pretty good class. I don't think that Miami,
I agree.
had a bad summer by any means, but I think the reason that we're not talking about it more is because guys like Derek Cooper went to Texas, that guys like Calvin Russell went to Syracuse, Bryce Perry Wright went to Texas A&M, Lamar Brown went to LSU. These were guys that Miami was very, very much in the mix for, and guys that were massive priorities for the Hurricanes that they missed out on the first time around. Now, that being said, each of the last two cycles, both in 24 and 25, since I've been here at Cane Sport, Miami has found a way to get to flip some really big priority names down the stretch. Last year, it was flipping Joshua Moore. He ended up being a top 75 on 300 outlier. They flipped him successfully from Florida. They also ended up being able to flip edge Hayden Lowe from USC. He ended up being a 5-star. That was a really big recruiting win. In 2024, they flipped Jordan Lyle, the number 1 running back in the country from Ohio State. And they flipped Justin Scott from Ohio State too. Miami does have a good track record flipping guys in the fall, and I really do think that Miami is expecting to flip some more guys this year. I absolutely believe the Hurricanes will add probably another 3-ish, give or take 1 or 2 players this fall. I think it's just a matter of seeing who the Hurricanes are going to get.
Yeah, and, Miami fans, let me know. Am I being too critical? Because I agree with what you said. I mean, a top 10 class, how can you not like what Miami's done? But I think the key word there is more explosive summer. Like James J.J. Johnson, another in-state must-have, especially when the Canes are on top, right? They're dominating the in-state rivals, but they're still not able to keep teams like Georgia, Texas, and others from raiding the state. So we'll see. And in week one, they're going to get a chance to be in front of the rest of the country playing in prime time against Notre Dame. We know recruits are interested in this one. The big news coming out this week, Derek Cooper will be there for the Notre Dame game. That's a huge one. What's been going on between Derek Cooper and Miami since his commitment to Texas? Is there communication?
Yeah, absolutely nothing has changed in the way that Miami was pursuing Derek Cooper. He was the number one running back on their board before he committed to Texas. He's still the number one running back on their board. The Hurricanes really want to take two backs this cycle. They already have one in four-star running back Javian Mallory, and the other guy that they have absolutely set their sights on is Derek Cooper. Quite frankly, if Derek Cooper doesn't end up flipping to Miami, I'm not totally sure if Miami tries to go out and get another back to supplement and get a second running back basically just for the sake of getting a second running back. Because I think the way that Miami views it is there isn't really another running back on their board that's kind of like a Derek Cooper. Miami, they pretty much finished second for him whenever he committed to Texas. It was Texas and then kind of a toss up between Georgia and Miami after that. But Mario Cristobal has told Derek Cooper, we're still coming. They feel like they are very much in this mix, and I think the Hurricanes are absolutely in this mix too. And I think proof of that is the fact that Derek Cooper is going to visit Miami for the Hurricane season opener against Notre Dame in Week 1. He's not taking that visit if there isn't some level of interest on his side in the Hurricanes, and really leading up to his commitment to Texas. Until let's say probably like the 2 or 3 weeks prior to his announcement, we still felt like Miami was in the best position. We felt like the Hurricanes were kind of in the driver's seat. I had an RPM on Derek Cooper that I entered shortly after official visits that I felt very, very good about. In late June, we really thought Cooper was probably going to be a Hurricane. The majority of the buzz that I was hearing around Derek Cooper was in favor of Miami. Then obviously Texas comes in. He never took an official visit there. He took an unofficial visit there, but they swooped him up. They outright stole him. He does plan on getting down to Texas a couple of times. I had the chance to speak with his mother yesterday, and she said that they were looking at maybe getting down to Austin the weekend of September 20th, and then maybe even trying to get to the Cotton Bowl whenever Texas plays Oklahoma October 11th. But Miami is not going anywhere, and I think the fact that he's continuing to have these conversations and the fact that he also said he's willing to continue having these conversations until signing day tells me that the Hurricanes are absolutely in this race, and I expect the Hurricanes to be in this for the long haul. He's like we said, he's visiting for the season opener. I think I would actually be surprised if he doesn't make a second trip to Miami at some point later in the fall too.
Those visits to those games are going to be huge. All right. Any other names that you're tracking for this Week 1 visitor list? We're only about 3 weeks away.
Yeah, so a name that I have heard may end up visiting, this has not been confirmed yet, but a name that I could see potentially visiting is Nolan Wilson, the defensive lineman, currently committed to Alabama. Miami finished second for him. We kind of thought that was going to be a Miami-Alabama battle whenever he committed to the Hurricane, or whenever he committed to the Tide. I still think Miami is in that race. James Johnson has told me a few times he does want to get down to Miami at some point. To my knowledge, he has not yet firmly locked in that visit, but that is not going to surprise me at all. On the 2027 side, yesterday, I was able to confirm that number 2 overall prospect and 5-star offensive tackle Mark Matthews is going to be at Hard Rock Stadium for that game. He's going to be another really, really massive priority. I mean, a 5-star offensive lineman in South Florida at a pipeline school that the Hurricanes have historically had very, very strong ties to. That is obviously going to be a player that we are going to monitor incredibly closely, even though his own signing day is more than a year away. And he has told me he probably isn't going to make a decision until next summer, but still, that is a recruitment that the Hurricanes are going to be absolutely very, very invested in. We're obviously expecting a boatload of Miami's commits to get to town for that game. Would not surprise me at all if the Hurricanes are able to end up getting 1 or 2, maybe kind of like surprise names to campus for that game, just because historically speaking, for these massive Miami home recruiting weekends, whether it's Notre Dame this year or Florida State last year or Clemson the year before that, or someone along those lines. There always happen to be a couple of names that kind of pop up late and really surprise us. Some names that kind of show up just the week before that game is expected to take place. So we're going to keep our eyes open. But right now, those are kind of like the headliners that we're going to be tracking the closest. I guess it wouldn't really surprise me right now if 4-star Florida State receiver commit Jason Lopez ended up making the trip to that game.
Yeah.
But as I said, that has not been confirmed yet, but I do expect to see him at a game at some point.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this list keeps growing and we see up to close to 50 elite targets for the 26 and 27 class joining this list. And I'm sure Kane Sports going to be your spot to keep track of all the week 1 visitors. And you guys let me know, Canes fans, are you going to be at the game week 1? Let me know. Comment section below.